Think about the wealthiest person you personally know. Not someone you saw on Instagram, someone real. Now ask yourself something interesting. Did you know they were wealthy right away? Probably not. Most people who quietly build real wealth don't look rich at all. No flashy lifestyle, no constant upgrades. But at the same time, thousands of people reach their 40s, 50s, even 60s with one painful realization. They made financial decisions they deeply regret. Not investing earlier. Buying a house they couldn't afford. Chasing quick money. After listening to hundreds of these stories, one thing becomes clear. The habits that quietly build wealth are the exact opposite of the decisions people regret the most. So in this video, we'll look at both. The biggest money regrets people share, and the quiet financial behaviors that successful people practice for decades. Because once you see the pattern, you start noticing it everywhere. One regret shows up again and again. People say, "I wish I had started earlier." Earlier investing, earlier saving, earlier learning about money. But the strange part is, most people could have started earlier. They just didn't. Not because they were lazy, because of fear. Fear of losing money. Fear of making mistakes. Fear of looking foolish. So they wait. They wait until they feel more prepared, until they understand everything, until the timing feels perfect. But perfect timing never comes. And the real secret of investing is surprisingly simple. Wealth rarely comes from perfect timing. It comes from time itself. Even small amounts invested consistently can grow dramatically when given enough years. The biggest mistake isn't starting small. The biggest mistake is waiting too long to begin. Another regret appears again and again. Buying too much house. For many people, buying a home feels like a symbol of success. Society constantly repeats the same phrases. Houses always go up. Real estate is the best investment. If you don't buy now, you'll miss out forever. But the numbers often tell a different story. Many people calculate the mortgage, but forget everything else. Taxes, maintenance, insurance, repairs. Suddenly, a manageable payment becomes a financial weight. Instead of building freedom, the house begins controlling every other financial decision. And the irony is that people rarely regret buying a modest home. They regret stretching too far. Because housing is not just a lifestyle decision, it's a math decision. If the numbers don't work, the stress eventually appears. Another major regret comes from chasing fast wealth. You hear it all the time. I should have bought Bitcoin earlier, or I lost money trying to get rich quickly. The pattern is always the same. Someone sees another person make money fast, and suddenly it feels like you're falling behind. That fear of missing out pushes people toward risky decisions. But speculation and investing are not the same thing. Real wealth almost never comes from one lucky move. It usually comes from something far less exciting. Consistent investing, diversification, patience. The boring habits rarely make headlines, but they quietly build most fortunes. Now here's where things get interesting. If you study people who quietly build wealth over decades, you start noticing certain behaviors, and many of them look surprisingly ordinary. One of the biggest differences is how they think about time. Most people try to save money on small things, driving across town to save a few dollars, spending hours doing tasks they don't enjoy. But people who build wealth often ask a different question. What is my time worth? They understand that time is the one resource you can never replace. So instead of optimizing for the lowest price, they optimize for the highest value use of their time. Over years, that small shift compounds in powerful ways. Another pattern appears in how quietly wealthy people spend money. Their spending is surprisingly boring, not flashy, not impressive. but incredibly effective. They pay for things like good accountants, reliable insurance, quality tools, automated investing. These purchases rarely attract attention, but they protect and grow wealth behind the scenes, while many people spend money to impress others. Quietly. Wealthy people spend money to make life run smoother. One moment reveals the biggest difference between most people and those who build wealth. It happens after a raise. Income increases. And almost immediately, spending increases too. A slightly nicer apartment, a slightly better car, more expensive habits. Individually, each decision seems reasonable, but together, they quietly erase the financial progress. People who build wealth tend to do something different. When their income rises, their lifestyle often stays the same, at least for a while. That gap between what they earn and what they spend becomes the fuel for investing. And that gap is where real wealth begins. One of the most expensive habits in modern life is status spending, buying things not for usefulness, but for appearance. The car that signals success, the house meant to impress visitors, the lifestyle designed for social media. The problem with status is that it has no finish line. There will always be someone with something bigger, something newer, something more impressive. So the game never ends. But people who quietly build wealth often step away from that competition. They stop trying to perform success and start focusing on building it. Another simple habit appears again and again. Small decisions are made quickly, but large financial decisions are made slowly. Major purchases, investments, business deals. These decisions deserve time, because most financial mistakes don't happen from moving too slowly. They happen from moving too quickly. When urgency appears, wealthy people often pause, and that pause prevents many expensive errors. When you look at the biggest money regrets people share, a pattern appears. Fear caused them to wait too long, pressure pushed them into decisions too quickly, and comparison led them to spend money for the wrong reasons. But the people who quietly build wealth tend to do the opposite. They start early. They live slightly below their means. They avoid unnecessary status games. And they make important decisions slowly. None of this requires a huge income. It simply requires a different approach to money. Because wealth rarely arrives through dramatic moves. It grows quietly, through small decisions repeated over many years. If one idea from this video stood out to you, share it in the comments. And if you're interested in the habits that quietly build financial freedom, subscribe and stay with us. Because the next video explores a question that changes everything. Why the first $20,000 you save is often the hardest and the most important.